Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the call. My name is Denver. I use she, her pronouns, and I have been organizing with Des Moines People's Town Hall for almost a year now. So I'm very thankful for them all. So while I'm kind of talking and stuff, if everyone could just put their name and pronouns in the chat, how they're either entering the space or why you joined the call. So we'll just do introductions. What is People's Town Hall? What can we do outside of the system? How to get involved within the system? LTEs, which is letters to the editor, writing tips, and then we'll have like a little open forum at the end. So I'm pretty excited. It's been a while since we've all kind of gotten in front of Zoom. And while everyone's putting their intros, name, pronouns, how they're coming into the space, or why they joined the call, I'm going to read our community agreements. This is something that we read at the beginning of any People's Town Hall event, and it's any time if we have an eternal meeting, we always read these with each other. Number 1, reach an agreement. At the start of any People's Town Hall event, we will go through the agreement and be open to feedback, question, and potential changes. Step up, step back. Everyone is invited to speak, and we want everyone to have an opportunity to say what's on your heart, and then step back so others can speak too. One speaker, one mic. To the best of our ability, let's honor the courage it takes to speak in public by listening. You matter. Every person's perspective matters because crafting the solutions our community needs will take each of us and our unique perspectives and experiences. Hate speech. At the root of community is love, and we won't tolerate any less. Racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, and any other isms are not allowed. We grow together. When we work to better understand our community, we can build the future we need together. I want to say thank you for everyone introducing yourself in the chats. And also, so I asked for your pronouns, and some people are like, but we share our pronouns at the beginning of every event because understanding and using people's correct gender pronouns helps ensure an inclusive culture where all voices are given equitable power. We are here to build a multiracial, multi-gendered, multi-generational, multi-geographical movement for justice, and sharing our pronouns is one way to model that inclusivity. Inclusivity also means understanding that everyone may not feel comfortable sharing their pronouns. So I see Jamie, they say, here to learn and listen. I love that energy because that's the best way to grow our community and grow within each other is to learn, to listen, and, give feedback. Cora says that they want to help build a better Des Moines, right? We're in just like, Des Moines is kind of, in the world in general, has been really a big struggle. It's been really stressful for a lot of people, and a lot of people are hurting and struggling right now. And coming together in these spaces is how we're going to build that, how we're going to build community to make a better Des Moines. So if you haven't introduced yourself in the chat, make sure to put your name, pronouns, how we are entering the space, or why you joined the call. I'm going to do a land acknowledgement. I'd like to recognize the land we are standing on and those who came before us. Iowa is no different than the rest of America. This land we live on has been destroyed and permanently altered by genocide and colonization. We must acknowledge that what white colonizers did to claim and steal the land and profit off of the rich soil that lies between the Mississippi and the Missouri rivers. Before this land was taken, indigenous folks tended and cared for all that was natural, the land, the animals, the plants, and trees. We are on Iowa, Meskwaki, Sauk, Kickapoo land that they nourished and nurtured, that they cared for. The ones that came before us guide us to do better, to bring nature back to them. It is our duty. It is not just the land that we must recognize was stolen, it was labor. Without indigenous cultures, we would not have corn. I grew up grinding corn in a molcajete while my grandmother told me stories of our Mayan heritage. how we were blessed by nature, and taking care of nature, we were rewarded with corn. This land was colonized, and now corn is capital. Corn in Iowa is feed for animals that are hurt, not nourished and taken care of like my ancestors once did. The wordage used so much, the heartland of America, is stolen from the labor of Black and Indigenous people. And so I really, if you do not live in Iowa, I would definitely recommend that y'all do changes to everybody. Look up, this is a link, it's a drop link that you can go to, and you can figure out what native land you are on right now. Before we go into our next segment, I just want to give if anyone wants to come off mute for, say, maybe like a 30 seconds to a minute and say either why they joined this call or how they're coming to the space, but also no pressure if nobody wants to share. Or I guess I could share, right? I'm coming into the space kind of nervous, but I had the day off and I took a 4-hour nap. So I feel well rested.
Hi, everybody. It's Indira here and Luke. I personally am coming into this space really excited. I want to see like what we're all going to talk about. I love being in spaces with this community specifically, and I'm so excited to see new people who are coming out interested to see what we're doing. This group has done amazing work, so that's how I'm feeling. I don't know if you want to say anything.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited too. I think, it's been frustrating, some of the city council's response to Indira, being sworn in the last few weeks, but also what they want is for us to just get frustrated and to try to combat their silly, silly little rule changes and that sort of thing. And what we're doing is so much more powerful than that with this meeting. So, yeah.
Love you all.
Thanks, y'all, for sharing. We appreciate all the work that you are doing, Indira, like speaking out, right? And you're there uplifting all of us as well. So it's not just you, it's all of us. And I love that about it. Anyways, does anyone else want to share before we move on?
I'm here as a Ward 1 resident since 2013. Having been called sweetheart and kiddo by Bill Gray so many times, it makes me want to light myself on fire. Very excited to have Indira be representing the neighborhood that I love and the city that I love.
Thank you, Monica. I didn't know you were a Ward 1 resident, so that's interesting to know. Ward 1 represent. I'm not, but I'm gonna pass it on to Adam.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Adam Callanan. I use him pronouns. I'm going to be talking just a bit about like who we are with People's Town Hall, which is kind of always the question. It's almost a trick question because we have like changed and shifted a lot, which I'll get into why that is. So there's not a short answer. So I got a few slides here to help me explain. Coming out of the George Floyd protests in 2020, and while they were still going on a bit, we saw a need for organizing and support outside of the existing structures. And that's like outside of city government, but even also outside of, groups like BLM and CCI and different groups that were doing things that, we like and support. But it seemed like there needed to be something else outside of that to offer some other kind of community support to bring people together. And I think since then, we've really been working at different ways to do that and kind of experimenting with different things. We're really trying to work collaboratively as a people, because, we aren't coming in and saying this is what we need. We're saying let's bring in people and over time decide together what we need out of an organization. So we've been building up that collective collaboratively, and we know that it's going to be a long-term struggle as well. It's going to be, hopefully there's going to be good parts, and I think tonight's a pretty good part of it. But this isn't just about this meeting. This isn't just about a certain council meeting or even a certain issue. This is saying we know that we need to create something better for the future of Des Moines rather than just tweaking the city we have. And we know that people can come together and do that because the problems we have are made by people. And so the solutions that we have can be made by people too. We know that we have a lot of awesome people on our side, especially after what we saw in 2020 and beyond. And then the last piece is we know that to get to where we need to be as an organization and as a broader community. We need to keep trying new things, and we need to create community solutions for community problems. Some problems have more like obvious solutions or things we've agreed on, but there's a lot of really tricky things that we need spaces to collaborate and make a consensus around to really find out what we need as a community. And having a space like People's Town Hall can hopefully allow for little like experiments, little organizing experiments to try new things, to bring people together and try finding some of those more creative community-based solutions rather than relying on the city and other people or asking the city to do other things for us. So the next slide gets into what we do, which the big things we do are direct actions and community events. At least that's what we aim for. Community events are things like tonight. We've had 1 or 2 in-person community events. Our first one was in person at the Sculpture Park. We'd like to have more, but with COVID, it's been hard, hence why we're virtual tonight and a lot of other times. We have also done some direct actions. The one I think of is around the Drake Stadium issue, where the council is pushing through a special meeting to rush a Drake Stadium project that currently is like now stalled because they can't afford it. I don't know that, I'm not going to get deep into that issue, but that was the issue at hand. If you haven't looked into what's going on with the Drake Stadium, I encourage you to look it up. There's a group called Save Our Stadiums that's focusing on that issue. But because of that, because there was a special meeting and because we knew that Bill Gray was in support of the stadium plan, during that meeting, we actually went to Bill Gray's house and held kind of a speak out there and had an action there on an action and community event really on Bill Gray's front lawn back when he was in charge of Ward 1. And we see how that turned out. He's no longer in charge of Ward 1, so we have a pretty good record there. Yeah, and then other things we do, things we're kind of more known for because it's more visible and something that's been easier to keep up over time is our council coverage. We've been covering a lot of things with Des Moines City Council because a lot of that stuff just needs to be tied together and explained because they make it as hard to digest as they can. We also do turnout to some of those meetings. We've done a bit less with COVID happening. We don't want to necessarily always be pushing people to the meetings, but we have done things like turning people out for speaking up and also pushing for contacting city council and other people, and also just documenting different archival projects and publishing documents and different things on behalf of city council, but we've also done some stuff with DMPS issues and other things as well. So it's not just council, but that's a lot of what we've gravitated towards and focused on. And then lastly, kind of the more fun and experimental stuff I was hinting at is we connect folks together across different organizations and try to start different projects. We have a lot going on right now that we're trying to start up. The big one now is the community newsletter. So I'll let Molly kick it off there.
Yeah, hi. So my name's Molly Arndt. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns. And I, along with some other folks from People's Town Hall, are trying to start a People's Town Hall newsletter. So our goal with the newsletter is to accurately cover what happens during city council meetings, provide a space for communicating people's issues that are being ignored by the council. I'm sure many of you have listened in on a city council meeting and heard folks' issues being ignored or, people not being given the space that they need to talk about their issue, and elevate calls to action and mutual aid opportunities. So kind of provide a space to tell folks what's going on and turn people out to events like this. And we're still in the early planning stages, but if that's something that you would be interested in working on, please drop your name in the chat or reach out after this to any of our social media accounts. Also, if you have any kind of ideas for an article you'd like to write or an issue that you'd like to see covered, we would love to hear from you. So please reach out.
Awesome. Great job. Please join our newsletter if you want to, if you have any interest in that. My name is Peyton Shoemaker. You might recognize me from TikTok if you're here from there. I have been with People's Town Hall since right after the first event when I went up to Adam and said I'm joining your group. And since then, a lot has happened. So here on the screen, we have our timeline of what has been going on in Des Moines basically over the last 2 years. Oh, good. That weird drawing on the screen is gone now. Okay, so we just have some milestones. Obviously, a lot more than this has been happening if you've been paying attention. at all, or even like passively paying attention, you've seen a lot going on, I'm sure. But basically with the protests of 2020, it led to a lot of people telling us to get involved with city council. So a lot of people turned out for that first city council meeting. It was a pretty important one. There were like over 1,000 people on that first call. And then after that, the first one that we have on this timeline right here, it was in August, where we were all online at this point. So it was a Zoom meeting, and people were fighting against this $99,000 ammo purchase for the STAR team, which is like the SWAT team or something in Des Moines. And this was kind of, I think, before People's Town Hall was officially a thing, but it was a lot of community members coming together to turn people out for this meeting. The original meeting, basically the people kind of got it shut down because we spoke out against this purchase for the police, and the city council ignored it and did absolutely nothing about it. So at the next city council meeting, which they rescheduled it to be at 7 in the morning, 2 days later, so not really an accessible time for everyone to be there. So, you know, they're probably hoping that not a lot of people would turn out and they could just get their business done and move on. But unfortunately for them, that's not what happened. The meeting ended up being 14 hours long. Went throughout the entire day because the people spoke on every single item. So it was a pretty great meeting, very, very long, and the city council was not very happy about how long it was. They had to take a lunch break in the middle of it. It was pretty funny. But it was a really great action that happened. It really wasn't even a planned thing. It was just everyone in the community coming together and fighting against that. And also, of course, that passed anyway because our city council sucks. So in September of that year, after that 14-hour meeting, the city council changed their procedural rules and limited public input a lot. So basically during this 14-hour meeting, their rules allowed people to speak, obviously, because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to have this 14-hour meeting and push the meeting to go longer and longer because people were just, you know, speaking when they wanted to speak. We still had to be recognized by the council and everything, but they let everyone at least say their thoughts that they had on every issue. After that, that was not allowed anymore. Could not say your thoughts on any issue that you wanted to. And we had a lot of meetings where speaking time in general, so you can sign up to speak in the public reports section at the end of the meeting. And a lot of those times were limited to like 30 seconds or less per person. So that's one of the times when a lot of people started to take interest in what was going on because they were like, why are they only giving them 30 seconds to speak? You know, it doesn't sound like a very democratic process. So then the next thing we have on here in June, we had our first in-person council meeting. That was 2021. A lot of stuff happened at that first meeting. If you want to check out TikTok, you'll probably see some stuff. You know, we had a big protest in the city council chambers. It was amazing. We held up a banner that said defund the police in the city council chambers. Basically, everyone was very fed up about not being listened to by the city council. You know, that's all people really wanted, was for our city council to listen, and they have been refusing to do that for a very long time now. So understandably, you know, people get upset. After that, they limited the public's ability to give input even farther by like not allowing people to take items off the consent agenda, which is the agenda that they pass with that they say things are non-controversial. They don't allow anyone to talk about it anymore. And then July and August, there were multiple arrests in the city council chambers and in City Hall in general, targeting people who speak at city council meetings. And then November, People's Town Hall endorsed candidates that were the best representation for the people. And obviously, Indira was the best representation for the people because she won the Ward 1 seat. Yay, Indira. And then January of this year, the council voted 6-1 to amend 25% of their procedural rules right after Indira was sworn into office, not directly after, but the meeting after that one, after Indira called for a special meeting to get a 24-hour warming shelter, which the other councilors ignored her motion about and left the meeting, putting on their coats and walking out. After that, they voted to amend the city council rules to basically make it a lot harder for Indira to say anything at these meetings, to have any input, and also made it harder for people to speak. Yeah, boo, tomato, tomato. And yeah, made it harder for Indira to be able to accurately represent the ward that she is meant to represent. You know, they're not just silencing Indira, they're silencing an entire ward of this city if their representative isn't able to bring things to the table that that ward wants, right? Like, it's not just that they're targeting one person, it's that they're targeting all of us. They don't have the best interest of the people in mind. I think that's really clear from what we've seen from our city council. So I think that leads us to our next slide here. What can we do outside of the system? So why are we relying on this broken system that isn't working for us to fix all of the problems that we have? You know, our city council has made it extremely clear that they don't want to help us, you know? We've even seen, you know, people told us when we were protesting, you need to go about this the right way. Go to the city council chambers. So they went to the city council. We tried to talk to them and get them to listen to us. They didn't listen to us. And they said, if you want someone who's on your side, you're going to have to elect your own person. So we did that. And now we have our own leader in city council, and they aren't listening to that person either. So it's just really clear that the system that we have in place is built against us, not for us. So what can we do to be building up our own community? What can we be doing outside of the system? Because we don't need to be relying on this broken system that isn't going to be helping anyone. You know, it's built on oppression, it's built on white supremacy, just like the rest of our country. So we need to be building up our own systems and our own community. So we are going to have a little bit of a brainstorming session here. So anyone feel free to chime in either in the chat, or if you would like to unmute and say ideas that you have for building your own community. So first, I want everyone to think about why our system is failing. I mean, I went over some of that here. We've seen clearly that it isn't working, but like, why do you think that is? And then the second question here is, what can we do to build up our community? So I want everyone to be thinking about that as well. What can we be doing? What can you specifically be doing to be building up your community? So a few examples that I'm going to have just right off the bat to kind of get people's minds thinking in the direction that we're going is one thing that is already happening is the People's Council, which was a big tenet of Indira's campaign for city council, to get a People's Council that will be a representative of themselves, basically, you know, actually talking with the community and getting them to say what they want to be happening in their community. And I can let Indira or Luke talk more about that because I'm probably not explaining it super well. And then another thing to think about is mutual aid. You know, what kinds of mutual aid can we be building? So yeah, does anyone have any ideas that they want to share?
I have an idea, but I need to form it in a question because I don't know what's possible. But is there any organization that can oversee the city councils, what they're doing? Because what they're doing doesn't sound legal to me. And so if they had a force, like, like if you have a problem with the police, you call in the state patrol, right? Is there somebody above city council that could, you know, kind of order them to behave themselves kind of stuff? Attend the meetings and be there as a monitor. That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, that is a very interesting idea. I would think my only problem with that is that I don't know if having someone else be above city council is really outside of the system, or if it's just, you know, adding more to that system. I mean, there's definitely some merit in that, and there's merit in lawsuits, you know, making them do the right thing by suing them, stuff like that.
How many
Anyone else?
people are on the city council, and have you ever invited someone to come to speak to this group to see from their side? I'm not saying I don't know anything. I'm just saying it's always good to hear from both sides as to why they might behave this way.
Yeah, there are, I just put in the chat, but there are 7 members of the city council. We have Indira, who's our 7th member, who's on our chat right now. We have talked to city councilors, of course. We've talked to them in the past, tried to see their side. The problem is they don't have a lot of interest in working with us, more just telling us what they want to do. I think we have some chat.
Oh, sorry. I know one thing that has been like very recurring in the last 5 years in Ward 1 has been all this talk of safety, right? And like the only conversation that anyone who wields any power is just call the police. Well, work with the police, call the police, invite the police. A friend of mine lives up close to 7th in Indiana, Darius. I saw Elizabeth he's up there by you. I don't know if you know Darius, but he has been trying to think of solutions outside of that. And I guess my point is, you know, having additional resources that people can call if there's a domestic violence issue, if someone is having an issue and they feel unsafe, you know, we talk a lot about, you know, obviously defunding police, and that's a larger conversation, but in the immediate, right, how do we create something else so that people don't have to rely on the police who are not safe and not a solution?
Yes, exactly. We definitely need to be thinking about how we can be creating systems so that we don't need to rely on the police, right? It's definitely
if I can jump in quickly, we have Aiden and then CC Vargas in the stack.
Awesome. Aiden.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
So I'm a disabled person who often can't leave their home without a wheelchair. And I've been trying for several years now to get city council to pay any attention to the disabled people. And a lot of people, when I hear the word accessibility, they think of stuff like ramps or like doors that you can open with the push of a button. And accessibility is way more than that. It's like, I call it my space theory of physical space, information space, community justice space, sensory space, transport space, labor space. There's all these different spaces and all these different ways we can, you know, make the city itself more accessible, more walkable or wheelable in my case. Like on my street, in my ward, there are no sidewalks. I can't navigate in the street with my wheelchair. People like go flying down my street. And so, but if I go to my council person, they won't answer anything. They haven't, none of them. I used to be in Joss's ward and he wouldn't even respond to me. I tried to talk about how they stopped being accessible by not allowing Zoom in their meetings anymore. I tried to get them to talk about the walkability of the city, where the majority of the city is really not that accessible. The food scarcity, and I've gotten nowhere. Indira's like the only person who's paid any attention. I'm really grateful for that. And so I'm hoping that with this, we can talk about that portion too and not forget that.
Yeah, that's so important. We definitely need to be thinking about accessibility because we need to live in a world where it's accessible for everyone, right? So yeah, that's definitely something to be thinking about. And clearly our government has proven that, you know, they're not going to address that. They don't care about that. So what can we be doing outside of that that's going to be helping people with these accessibility like issues? What can we do to be helping that? I know last winter, I believe there was that whole effort of clearing bus stations of snow and everything, and clearing sidewalks of snow so that they would be more accessible. So can we be doing more things like that, you know? All right, I think next in the stack was Steve Vargas and then Indira for DSM team.
Yes, what up, y'all? This is Chelsea Chisholm Vargas. Thanks to People's Town Hall for hosting this. My pronouns are she, her, ella. Yeah, I love this idea. And like, I know some folks have talked about this too, but like with what I think it was Aiden that was just speaking about just ability access throughout the city. Healthcare is another thing that like the fucking city doesn't give a shit about. And there is Des Moines Street Medics who have like a lot of healthcare professionals that rock with them. But I don't know, I just always think too, like if the internet went out and we weren't able to talk to each other, because like we were saying too, you know, we started organizing, a lot of us digitally was a big way, and still doing it right now. But like if we didn't have access to this, how are we going to connect with one another in general? So like, I don't know, healthcare I think is one thing that like always thinking of mutual aid efforts that we can do around healthcare, whether it's like gathering medications with one another and hosting them somewhere, finding people abortion access, whatever it is big, that I think that we should always be focusing on. But too, just like knowing where we are to one another. Like I know who's in like my neighborhood, but you know, there's 50 plus folks on this call. And if we needed to reach out, especially if we didn't have any type of digital access, like just making kind of like a contact list of trusted people, whoever feels safe to like be a part of that, I think is a basis to building mutual aid efforts too.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, Chelsea. I love that, having kind of like an address book or something, you know, a contact sheet for all the people who like want to be involved in some kind of mutual or reciprocal aid system within the city. I think that's an amazing idea. That would be something, people's directory. I love that. That's definitely something that I would love to see some energy around doing. I'm loving all of these ideas. Who was next? I think it was Indira and then someone else.
And then it was Jenny Irwin after me. Okay, hi. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the first question, like why is our system failing, right? And this question of why rely on a broken system. So something that was really illuminating for me and kind of like brought my whole worldview, like brought everything together and made it all make sense, was just like the first few chapters of Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States. I was supposed to read it when I was 13 and I didn't, and picked it back up right before the pandemic and read the first few chapters, and that's it, because I should have read more, but I didn't. And it was really just like on the origins of America, and it really just made everything make sense. It was slavery didn't happen because we hated Black people. We hate Black people because slavery happened. It was that all of the issues that we deal with today are based in and like because of that first like colonial like excursion into America, and all of our systems are built off of that. And so it's like, why is our system failing? Because it's not made for us. If you look back into the history, something that I realized going on to city council was like how feudal everything still is, and how like we are pretending that this democracy is a new thing from this lords and like landowners system that we had, and it's really not, and that we don't really have true democracy in our country right now. We have this representative democracy, but a representative democracy that's alongside capitalism just means that only these people with like very high like money interests are the ones who are getting access to power, and they've been holding on to power for the entire history of America, and getting one Black person in there doesn't change that. The system is still the same. And so when we look at that, we realize that this system really can't stand, and what we need to create is like to get equality, to get equity, to get anybody on the same level. We can't stay in hierarchical capitalist systems. We have to move towards true direct democracy, where people are coming together and making decisions with their neighbors. And I love what Chelsea said, because the building block of this, I think we always have these high level ideas, but the building block is really just knowing your neighbors and talking to like a small group of people next to you, and then building up networks through that system. And so Luke, I think, wanted to talk about what we're building up with the People's Council.
Yeah, so I worked on Indira's campaign as the field director, and Indira came up with this idea through some other examples that she found throughout the US of a People's Council, which basically is intended to be a network that will be outside of the system that exists, that will connect neighbors throughout Ward 1, where Indira was elected, basically so that they can create their own mutual aid projects. They have, more solidarity with each other, and have more support from one another to push forward ordinances and legislation that they can pass. And just so they can help each other out when the government inevitably fails to take care of their needs, which, it's not just like the lack of space for people to speak to the government that's the issue. We also just have a government that actively is prioritizing, like corporate Des Moines over, the people that really need the funds from their budget and need like ordinances that are directed at their lives. So we're working on creating this People's Council. We've got like hundreds of people that we met through the campaign that are interested in being a part of it. So that's really exciting, but it's going to take a little bit of work. So if you want to get involved, definitely you can reach out to like us through Indira's social media. If you know me, you can reach out to me, because I'm going to be doing a lot of the organizing. And then also we are taking donations, contributions for anyone that wants to donate to help basically pay me to organize as much, use as much of my time to organize on it as
and
possible.
Also resources we may need to get the word out and things like that.
Yeah. So
what happened? But yeah, so we're trying to build up a decision-making body, essentially. It's an alternative government system. It's dual power. It's about autonomy for our communities. So we have a system right now that is top-down, hierarchical, that lets 7 people make decisions for everybody else, and then everybody's just at their whims of the decisions they make. So we want to build an alternative to that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I agree with everything you both said. Not shocking, because you're my sister. Anyway, something that I wanted to touch on specifically and bring back to attention is, Indira said that one of the most important things is just to know your neighbors. That's definitely something that's very important, be going out, talking to the people who are already in your community. Another thing we had on our list of how to or organize outside of the system is just canvassing your community, Doesn't even have to be about politics. You can canvass for whatever reason you want. All right, I think we had one more person on stack, Jenny. Yes, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
Can you hear me? Great. Okay, so I just wanted to remark again on what we can do to build up our community, something that I do. I know when I look around our community and the things that I need, there is a swath of people that control the resources that I need. And it's not me, it's not my generation, it's not most of my friends. We don't control those resources, but I can go next door to the old lady that's like 90 and can't get out of her house anymore, but she got 2 garages full of resources. She got a whole backyard she never even touches anymore. And so she's, you know, she's a crotchety old lady, forgive the term, but she's my neighbor. She's the closest resource I have. And her kids are a little uncomfortable with me being more than a neighbor. They say, "Oh, Jenny, you don't want to get too close to our mom. She gets a little persnickety about how things have to happen." And I mostly just brush that off because I know her kids probably have the resources they need. They don't need to depend on their neighbors. They can be just neighbors and not intermesh their lives with their neighbors. And I know I cannot do that. I know I need those resources. Quite frankly, I need the resources that old lady next to me controls. And so I'm very, I don't know, I hope I'm not rude about it, but I'm clear about it. I was like, I want to use your backyard. I want to use part of your garage. And I talked to her about it. And sometimes it doesn't go well. Sometimes it does go well. But on the small term, like every neighbor you can talk to, every neighbor you can intermesh your lives with, it's not super easy all the time. She's got a damn blue light on right now. I think she's so old. I don't even think she really knows what it means anymore. And I don't know where I was going with that, but that's one of the solutions is small term. Like, yes, we need our neighbors, and to be very blunt about it, we need those resources that they control, and we need to be using them to better more lives in whatever way we can. And it's lovely to see all your faces. Thanks for letting me talk. I love you all. That's it.
Thank you so much for that great example. That was a really good example of how, you know, we need to be in community with each other. I think as a nation, right, we need to be getting over this view of individuality being the only way, right? Like America is very individualistic and we don't need to be. We can rely on each other, right? Okay. Did anyone else want to give closing thoughts? I think I saw Denver wanted to respond, maybe.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, I feel like connecting your neighbors is grounded within like basic, maybe like canvassing. Like it sounds like her sons, like your neighbor's son, like maybe just needs more, like the way that kind of explained it to me was like they're kind of privileged in a way. So maybe you need to have like a more of a conversation with them to realize that there are communities hurting, and they like, so they can see it from a different point of view. And I think if having those like conversations and like in a way that's coming off as understanding, giving them space to like understand their feelings and like, you know, I would recommend looking up deep canvassing.
Deep canvassing, yeah. You want to share some links about deep canvassing, Denver? And then we'll move on. I think all of this talk about being in community with each other is a great way to segue into mutual aid. We have a lot of mutual aid networks in Des Moines and in Iowa in general already. All these links are on the screen. They're also dropped in the chat right now, but you can also start your own mutual aid projects. It's great to start your own mutual aid projects in your community and donate to these ones if you are able. And on to our next slide here. This is how to get involved within the system. So we need to be getting involved outside of the system. We need to be building up that power, but we also need to be recognizing that we still have to live within the system that is in place, right? So the best thing that we can do is to try to make it as good as we possibly can. So that is why we have all of these different ways to get involved within the system as well. So first, talk directly to council members. That's the best way to get them to actually listen to you, because a lot of them don't listen or don't answer their phones or answer emails. So the best way to talk to them is directly. Obviously, that is not a solution for everyone. And it's COVID right now, so don't do it if you don't want to have them breathe all over you. The next is letters. You can write them letters. I believe it's just a city hall or something, and they have their own addresses, maybe. I don't know. And then next, you can call them. We have a a slide next that's going to have all the city councilors' phone numbers and emails. So you can take a picture of that, or I'm sure we'll send it out at the end of this too. So you can have all of that information for you there. And then the next thing, which we're going to go into more detail after this, is letters to the editor. It is one of the best ways to not only be showing the city council, you know, what you want, telling them what you want, but getting that viewpoint out to a lot of other people as well, and kind of starting to build that community with other people or get other people interested in what's going on. And then obviously the last one on here, elect more city council members that will listen and represent the people and the interests of the people. So we have Indira. With all their new rules, Indira can't really do anything by herself. So we would need another city councilor to be able to get anything done within the system. So yeah, here's that contact sheet with all of their phone numbers and emails. We'll leave that up for a little bit maybe so you can, oh yeah, a lot of them are up for re-election in 2023. So also, if you want to run against any of them, I would strongly encourage that as well.
Can I jump in here?
Or
Unless y'all have a section for electoralism in here.
What was that?
Can I jump in for a sec?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just on the electoralism piece, we all know electoralism is not the solution. We all know that even getting 7 council members on this board would not be the solution. We already talked about that. However, getting a bunch of them out is going to help. And so I am looking at people who want to run for 2023. We've got the mayor's seat is going to be open. And then we've got Ward 4, Joe Gatto, Ward 2, Linda Westergaard, and at-large Carl Voss are all up for re-election. If you live in Ward 2 or Ward 4, or if you live anywhere in the city of Des Moines and want to run against Carl Voss or want to run for mayor against, who knows, his name might start with Josh, then literally hit me up. If you know anybody who is interested in that, hit me up, because we need to build a slate for this next election and get these motherfuckers out of here.
Thank you, Indira. Yes, so that was great. I also liked what was it? Jennifer said, yeah, volunteer for these campaigns if you don't want to run yourself, you know, volunteer for the campaigns of getting these terrible people out of office. And someone asked about what happened with the new rules. Adam, did you want to maybe take a minute and say some of that, or do we want to just send that out later?
I can take a moment and I can link to my thread as well. So I'm trying to how to abbreviate this because it's a lot and I know too much about it. Since we started showing up, even before we were People's Town Hall, council has had one main avenue to counter just people coming and speaking at their meetings. And that's changing the rules out from under us. You know, before we started this, the meetings were way more open. People could pretty much just speak freely and sign up to speak and speak on agenda items. Once we started showing up, they changed that because they didn't like what they were hearing. So it's gone through a lot of different iterations. I'm not going to try touching on everything right now, but I think the most ridiculous it got, at least most outwardly ridiculous, is at one point we each had 20 seconds to speak. We had like 70 people signed up, each with 20 seconds. And on top of that, after people had like taken off work to sign up to speak and have a moment to speak at council meetings, they actually voted to kind of null and void over half people that had signed up. Which I still don't understand how that's legal if people have signed up to speak at a public meeting and then you vote at the meeting to silence them. Yeah, just wild stuff's been happening. And the latest one, which has people especially mad because they're now not just countering like people coming and speaking at meetings, they're now using rules to counter elections. So now that Indira has been elected, they have openly said, at least Mayor County and Connie Bozen both told the Register directly that the rule changes that they passed were intended to stop new ideas from coming to council, which hard to read that any other way than Indira's election. And so the new rule changes, there's a lot of different things in them, some of which was luckily taken out before they passed it. But the major things are just stopping things a single city councilor can do. Most of that's motions need to be seconded by a second councilor now. Other things randomly need majorities that didn't used to. There's weird limits like council members can only speak on 4 things from the consent agenda. And yeah, there's a lot of different stuff. Like I said, I can't get into it, but that's the overview. And I'm happy to answer any questions if people have more details that they want to know. And I'll link something in the chat here in a minute.
Thank you, Adam. All right, now our next section is going to be about writing letters to the editor, a great way to be connecting with other people and other ideas. I'm going to let Natalie take over.
Okay, so my name is Natalie Harwood. My pronouns are she, her, and I wanted to take a little bit to talk about writing letters to the editors because it can be a really good advocacy tool to have in your toolbox. And I think it can be intimidating for folks, and it really shouldn't be because it's pretty easy to get a letter published, and it's a really effective thing. And there are things you can do to amplify its effectiveness as well. And so I hope after I spend a little bit of time talking about this, you can come away more confident to write letters, and we'll do a little bit of brainstorming about what kind of topics might be good. So writing a letter to the editor is just a piece of writing you submit to community members for publication in a news outlet on a topic of interest. So, you know, basically any news outlet has like a section that people can write in and respond to articles that have been written. There are great advocacy tools in your toolbox because you can do them from home in your own time. You don't have to show up at a specific council meeting time. You know, you don't have to risk community transmission when you're going out during COVID times. It can be a great way for disability activists to get their voice heard, to be able to reach a larger audience than they would be able to normally, especially since you can't really access council meetings very well now in a particularly safe manner. They're often read by elected officials, especially if you submit to whatever your local paper of record is. For us, that would be considered to be the Register. For Nick in Johnson County, that'd be the Press Citizen. So, you know, they usually keep tabs on that. So you can reach elected officials sometimes more effectively that way because people can see it publicly. You can bring up topics that aren't addressed in the media or public meetings, and so it allows the public to actually drive a discussion when a topic isn't, you know, you can only talk about certain things in the council meeting, and you can like actually bring something into the public sphere using a letter to the editor. It helps create an impression of widespread support or outrage for a given issue, and so creating more of that critical mass can help drive elected officials to act. A letter to the editor is a little bit different from a guest editorial. A guest editorial is a longer piece. It follows a lot of the same principles, and you can submit them in a lot of the same places. But it's shorter. It's usually like 200 words. You just submit it to the letter page. There's a low barrier for publication. It doesn't require an author bio or a picture, and so it can be feel a little bit safer for some people too. So I'm going to talk a little bit about preparing to write a letter, writing it, and then editing it when you're done. So I'm going to give you some letter writing tips, but the most important thing to know is that you have a great chance of getting published by simply trying. Not a ton of people submit letters, and a lot of times it's the same people. And so, you know, if you give it a shot and write something that you care about, you have a really good chance to get published. And I don't want tips to be like intimidating or feeling like you have to be some kind of professional writer to do this, because it's really, really simple. But I also think, like, you know, getting some background or some of the ideas I've got from local writers could be helpful too. So when you select your topic, you have your best chance of getting published if the topic is a direct response to something written by the paper you're submitting to. So if they write an article and you either emphatically agree with it or you really disagree with the thesis, responding directly to that gives you your best chance possible of publishing. But you can also increase your chance by selecting something that's topical or local, like a recent city council meeting. Reasons you might write a letter to the editor or kind of ideas to get you started on picking a topic is if you're angry about something that's happened, you want to spread awareness. Something that happens at a city council meeting is a great topic. You want to express public support for something or someone. You want to correct a published article that has misinformation. You want to influence public opinion, persuade others to take action, or influence policymakers, or to draw attention to a specific organization's work. So as we're talking, if you think of topics that might be good for someone to write a letter to, and you want to pop it in the chat, that would be amazing. I'm hoping we can get kind of a bigger community of writers going so we can keep the people's issues that are at the top of like the Register and some of the other like local outlets. So I would say when you choose your outlet, it's a good idea to like briefly research it. So when you know what news outlet you want to submit to, pull up the letters they've published recently. This helps give you an idea of the length, format, and topic that the outlet likes to publish. It can also give you a jumping off point. You could respond to a specific letter or writer with support or disagreement, and double check that a similar letter hasn't already been published, because they're not going to publish a second one and you don't want to waste your time. Look up their word count preferences. The Register specifically prioritize letters that are 200 words or under, but every outlet is a little bit different. I reached out to a couple of like the major local ones that we have to ask, so I'll tell you what they said to me about what requirements would be, but usually that like the shorter the better, the more concise, the more likely they'll be to publish it. It also makes it less likely they're going to edit your letter and potentially cut things you don't want them to cut. So also check for other guidelines as well. Sometimes they won't publish a specific topic, like some newspapers won't publish an endorsement of a politician. They also sometimes will limit how often you can submit. You don't want to waste your time if you've submitted too often or lose the chance for a piece to be topical. So just be sure you check into that stuff first when you're thinking about what you're going to write, or maybe select a different outlet for that particular topic. Submit to papers one at a time. Sometimes they won't publish a letter that's also in another outlet. So make a list, submit to the first choice, and then second choice, and then third choice. So submit them to a ton of different places until you get published. But my suggestion is just to do it one at a time. If you're responding to a specific piece in a specific paper, try to submit it within 2 to 3 days afterwards, or it'll kind of drop off and they'll be less likely to publish it. And then cultivate relationships with local reporters and editors if possible. That makes them more likely to go to you if they're looking for a certain perspective. And it just like having that good relationship makes them more likely to publish you in the future. So some examples of local outlets you could select. Obviously the Register, it's really easy to submit. There's an online form that you fill out. There's preference given to under 200 words, and you have to be willing to provide personal information. So that's something that you're going to include an address and a name, location, stuff like that. So if that's something that doesn't feel safe to you, you would probably want to choose a different outlet. Bleeding Heartland is another option. That's a local progressive blog run by an editor named Laura Bellin. I reached out to her on Twitter to ask her what kinds of tips she would want me to pass along to someone wanting to publish on hers. She said there's no limit to her guests. She just does straight guest posts instead of letters. So you can just post any length of article or submit to her to post. Usually people publish between 400 and 800 words, but she'll do less, she'll do more. You do have to create an account with her to submit, so you'll need an email address. She can be reached out to at bleedingheartland@gmail.com. Provide a non-copyrighted image to go with it. And she really likes if you include lots of links. So you have lots of supporting evidence that has links to other information. Smaller local papers in small town areas impacted by your topic, or if you're not in the Des Moines area, like Nick, you can look at the ones that are more in your area. And then the Iowa Informer is another good one. They don't have like a letter to the editor page per se, but they accept guest pieces. There's no length requirements. And the editor of Iowa Informer is Gavin Aronson, and he's a friend. So I have a lot of tips from him later. So I'm going to skip over that part. Okay, so when you actually start writing, the letter to the editor start with a super simple opener, just like Dear Editor or Dear Editor of the Des Moines Register. If you're responding to a specific article, you always want to lead with that. So I wrote in a couple examples, I would maybe start with, I strongly disagree with Joel Curtinitis' misguided view of reproductive rights. And then in parentheses, put the name of his article, Exceptions to Fetal Heartbeat Bill Deny Personhood of the Unborn, and then the date. That is an editorialist I really fucking hate. So it just like popped to the top of my head as someone I would respond to. So that's an example. Or you could say, I was disappointed to see the Register's January 23rd editorial with COVID-19 straining hospitals and schools. We can all do something to help. Omitted key facts about the COVID-19 pandemic. And all of this stuff I have written down in an outline, and I will be adding it to the notes. So like if you are interested in reading, like you like actually looking at specific examples, I have those too. So don't worry that it's not on the screen. So Nick Tyson is a local blogger on the eastern side of the state. He runs the Iowa Shitty Substack. It's amazing. You should definitely subscribe to it. But I reached out for him for his writing tips because I had been reading a lot of his stuff lately and it was really good. He's on the call now, so hi Nick. And his suggestion was to follow the sandwich essay model. So credit to Nick. And that model is lead, some facts, and lead. So that means state your argument, explain why that's your argument, and provide support, links to evidence are effective, and then restate your argument. So because that's what they teach people in journalism school, it's going to make a reporter more likely to want to publish something that's kind of written in that same sandwich essay model. So I'm going to type that in the chat, which is just lead, support, and then restate your lead at the end. Okay, so I have some kind of specific tips that I got from Gavin Aronson, the editor at the Iowa Informer. He said, I'm going to go kind of rapid fire through these, but they're going to go in the notes as well if you want to refer back to them. He says when he's like selecting someone to publish, trying to be concise, don't overwrite or use lots of adjectives, don't try to cram in too much, keep it pretty simple. A hook to something topical, localize as much as possible to the specific audience you think is most effective target, to use layman's terms. So simple language, don't use lingo the general public won't understand. A lot of times people write things they're really passionate about, but that sometimes means they're super knowledgeable about it too. And they can include like acronyms or things that are confusing to someone who is just knows nothing about the topic coming in. And he also said to let your argument speak for itself. So avoid hyperbole as much as possible, just, you know, argue passionately and state the facts, and that should be strong enough on its own. And then I would add that ending with a call to action is a really good idea. So I wrote some examples of what those might be. Directing a reader to actions they can take to become more involved in the issue in the community. Directing to a website of organization that furthers your goal, giving people a way to find more information, telling them to call, email their council people, or other direct action like donating or volunteering. And then, so after you've written your article, you're going to want to edit it if you want to go to the next slide. Oh, here's an example. So I'm going to talk about editing and then I forgot to include the example in my notes here. So have a couple people take a look over the letter to check for errors. So you're not expected to be a professional writer. Don't put pressure on yourself. Just check that your letter is clear and concise. The editor of the paper is also your editor in this circumstance too. So if there's typos, they'll catch them. They're also looking over it as well. But it's a good idea to check for jargon, acronyms, read your letter aloud to yourself once to check for the flow. Don't be discouraged if your letter isn't selected. Try with a different topic or submit your letter to a different outlet altogether. I'm so sorry, Taylor, can you go back to the example now? I should have put those in. So this is one that I just pulled from last month in the Register that I really loved that follows the sandwich model. It starts with tells you the information, provides you some stuff in the middle, and then it actually, instead of circling back to the lead, it includes an action item at the end, which I really like. So you can read this and it'll be included in the notes, but this is kind of, I think, a really manageable length for writing a letter into an outlet. It's not too intimidating. You can accomplish a lot with it, but it's still only 200 words. And so this is kind of like a really good one to read over and maybe get some ideas. So I really liked this one. It ends with, please call or write to the utility board, voice your disapproval and fright. We must do all we can to heal Iowa's land and water, not destroy it more. So just wanted to include an example that kind of shows you what I was talking about. Okay. So building a rapport with editors, publishers of outlets goes a long way to getting you published. They've done this before. They can be used to help. You can reach out for questions with them. But if they decide not to publish your letter, do keep trying. There's lots of places that you can submit it to. If you need ideas for other outlets besides the ones that, you know, I've given here, you can always reach out for more too. But you should keep trying. Someone will publish it. Just because it doesn't make it to the register doesn't mean that there isn't some place that it can go. And then my last thing is, once you actually get a letter published, you can really amplify the impact by doing a couple things. So put it on your socials, contact organizations you know that will amplify the cause. You can send it to People's Town Hall on Twitter, Instagram, and we can post those things to get it to a wider audience. Send a link or clipping to the relevant politicians or decision makers. It really is effective. I've done this before, like actually cut the letter I wrote out of the newspaper and mailed it to my representative, and I actually got a response from it that way. Like, people find that to be very impactful. And then ask your friends, family, and social network to promote your work. And I will hand it back over to Peyton.
Oh, it's supposed to be me, but
oh,
thank
sorry,
you,
Denver.
Natalie. It's okay. Yeah, no, that's really exciting. I have always been kind of hesitant around LTEs and those kinds of things, but the way you explained it, like, makes me feel kind of comfortable. And like, when we're talking about LTEs and stuff, I was like, I don't want to be a part of that team at all. And now, like, I'm seriously considering it, and I think I can do it, you know? And there's a lot of things that we kind of had during this meeting that we can do, right? We can like do electoral politics, right? Because either we need to tear the system down from the inside or the vice versa, right? It goes out from the outside, but anyways, and then, yeah, LTDs. And then, so yeah, I would say we don't really have another event planned right now, but like, definitely keep out, because we're going to do more calls like this. And I'm kind of working on one right now. So just follow us on social media, and we have the newsletter, LTEs, we have a lot of things going on. I'm really bad at watching the slides, but so follow us on social media. I've been dropping the links in the chat here. And then I just want to know how y'all are feeling. How are we leaving this space? Because I kind of shared with y'all how I came into this space. I was kind of nervous. And now I'm kind of leaving very full, like full of community. My heart feels warm, and I'm very thankful and grateful to be in this space, because it would not be happening if we didn't like work together. It wouldn't be happening if people came together and had conversations that normally wouldn't be had, right? So, and that's community. Yeah, I'm feeling hopeful, amped, encouraged, informed, and supported by community. Constructive. Excited, connected. Would anyone like to come off mute and talk about how they're leaving this space and what they're going to do with it moving forward?
I just wanted to quickly chime in and say this was a great meeting. It went better than any of us could have ever expected. I am definitely feeling really great after this. I think we got a lot of really good ideas on how we can be helping our community, how we can be existing within the system that we're in, and also working to make our lives better outside of the system, right? So we have a lot of those ideas. We talked about why our system isn't working. We talked about what we can be doing outside of the system, and then what we can be doing inside of the system. And I put this in the chat, but I just want everyone to really take it in that you individually don't have to be doing everything. You don't have to be doing everything outside the system and inside the system and writing letters to editors and joining all of these different groups. Like, just do whatever you specifically can do, because that's the way that you're going to be the most helpful. We don't want anyone to burn out, get fatigued from trying to do too much. Just contribute in any way you can, and your community is going to prop you up.
Could I say something? Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay. At our church where I go, we have letter writing parties. We somebody researches the current issues, and I think we already have that down. And we just gather and have letter writing parties to the editor, to the senators and representatives. I just thought that'd be a good way to do things together and feel the community that way.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's such an easy way to like get your neighbors together, like start the conversation to like work together. And it's like so much easier to bounce ideas off of each other. So that's like just you presented a very great example of communities working together, and that kind of is like a mutual understanding of knowledge as well. So
yeah, I was gonna just share quickly. My brain is feeling sufficiently stormed right now. So yeah, definitely. I think it's just encouraging to see how many people joined tonight and to hear everyone's perspectives on what's been going down in the city, because like other than Indira, the city government is very much a united front on everything. That's the reason they're making these new rules, trying to get like anything that Indira brings up to go through them first, is because they don't want there to be any sort of appearance of, you know, opposition or diversity of opinions on the city council. So it's cool to, you know, in a way come together and be able to like recognize that we also have like, you know, these unifying goals and a lot of different ways to go about whether it's like dealing with those city councilors or forgetting them and creating new systems. We have a lot of ways to do great things together. So yeah. Indira, did you have anything you want to say?
I'm inspired by my community and I'm so glad that it's getting bigger. That's all.
I think Brad is in the stack.
Yeah, it's actually really good timing for you to chime in on that, Indira, just at the very end. Because yeah, I'm also feeling just like really inspired and very powerful right now. And I say that because thinking back, I know we talked about them like really briefly at the beginning of the call, thinking back on like the early people's town hall days and the early days of really just like visible resistance in this city. Whether that's, you know, the George Floyd uprisings here, or that's just like other small insulated groups that have been doing the work for years in our community. We have more people on this call right now than we had on the last one. And the last one had more people on the call than the one before that. And also like the more people are engaging and like sharing their vision and their ideas. And like, that's really inspiring to me, because that's my neighbors. When I look around, like the only, like we make it seem so complicated, like what the work that we need to do is. And a lot of it is hard, but it's really simple what the next steps are. And that's just growing more and more and bringing more people into our community and making our community stronger. And that's like exactly the kinds of things that everybody seems to be on the same page about. And that's like the most important part. And that makes me very hopeful for the future. And I feel very powerful with all of you. And I really appreciate you all being here.
It looks like Taylor, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I figured I'd say I'm relieved at the end of this meeting, having to present my screen and execute on it. I was terrified that I would share like all my passwords to something, or, you know, just really flub it up. And outside of allowing some drawing in the meeting, I thought I did, you know, more or less serviceable. But yeah, I had a little thought of, as we were going through the timeline piece, of when I first started really truly paying attention to city council, how you could show up, talk about an item on the consent agenda you wanted pulled, they'd maybe make a motion and you might actually get to talk about it, to now where you can't actually request at all as a regular citizen, whether that consent agenda item could be on or not. And I was thinking to myself just now, like, man, I should be pretty like depressed about the state we're in. But after this, I'm like super jazzed. Like, it doesn't, that's fine, cool. If you don't want to talk to me via my email, I know I've got a bunch more people now. And as we continue growing, it's pretty amazing to see that even as they continue on the path that leaders have been, there's more and more people coming out to make sure that what's right is being heard. So that's pretty awesome.
Taylor, you're the best. So I'm gonna squirrel though on this conversation. And a squirrel to me is when you're having a conversation to someone and you have a thought that pokes in your head and you have to tell that person right away and really fast. I just want to tell Adam happy birthday and that he is the best person ever. And like we would not be here together if it wasn't for Adam, because he made People's Town Hall, and like, but it's not him that just makes it, like, but he brought us together to build it. So
happy birthday, Adam.
Happy birthday, Adam!
Okay, everyone unmute, and 1, 2, 3. Happy
birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, dear Adam.
Happy
That was great. I'm kind of gonna cry right now. So
I heard a dog barking at that.
If they don't do what we want, we'll sing at them.
That is something we haven't tried yet. We gotta put that in our list. Yeah, good timing. Thank you all for coming and for singing for me. That was beautiful. I was also in the stack next. I was in the stack next. I had a few things I wanted to say too. The thing that really hits me, like, kind of every time we do any of these things, is how long we've been doing this for at this point. Because I can tell you the first few council meetings we came to, they did not expect that, you know, we were going to be here 2 years later. And now I can't, it's flipped around in my mind, at least. I can't picture us like going away anytime soon now. We've really established ourselves, and that's not just me or just anybody else, not even just Indira. Like, that took a lot of support from a lot of the community and a lot of work that you don't see if you're watching the meetings. A lot has gone into building up these networks and bringing people together. And with that too, how much we're able to do on our own. Because I mean, one of the demands we've had since the start, one of the demands that we started on was for the city to host town halls, which they still have not actually done. They've hosted some things like town halls, but not like an actual town hall yet, or at least nothing called that. And we've hosted how many just ourselves with like no money, just like, hey, does somebody have a Zoom account? Let's set this up. Just figuring it all out together. And of course, there's some road bumps. I would like to apologize for and commit to making sure we have closed captions and other accessibility features in the future. In future meetings, that's something we did miss this time, and I'm sorry for that and committing to doing better next time. But yeah, it's just really possible. I mean, we've seen how the city struggled with all of its resources having meetings, and we could just be doing it ourselves. And I think we need to look at more problems like that. And I say that, but I think a lot of us already are, of what can we do, even if it's like once a month, you know, giving out some food to somebody, just like small things we can do to improve our community, like once a month or something. We can build that up over time and build really amazing things. And it seems like with the people we have, that's going to keep happening. So I'm really excited to see what comes next. I think Nick is stacked. I don't know if I missed anybody because I was speaking.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Awesome. So I'm an interloper. I just wanted to send extremely warm greetings from Johnson County and from those of us who are organizing in and around Iowa City. I know a lot of you, I've worked with a lot of you before, and I have to say that we take a lot of inspiration from what y'all are doing. So if you ever feel like it's too much or it's too difficult, remember that being out there and doing this work is not just inspiring to people in Des Moines or in Polk County, it's also inspiring to people all across the state. And we love you and keep up the great work.
We love you back. We love you.
All right, things are winding down. Do we have anybody else wanted to speak up or anything else before we close out?
I will just say, I get really discouraged a lot of the time that like I get really optimistic, like I got really optimistic about the warming center and then it didn't happen right away. But something that this community and my friends, the people I've organized with, have reminded me of is that even the small things are building up to something more. And so everything that we've done, every impact that we've made has had an effect. And so every small thing that you do, everything you can contribute to this, is going to have an effect. And you might not see it right away, but people around you do. So thanks, Nick, for reminding me of that.
Yeah. I thank you, Indira. I just wanted to ask if one of our mods could stop recording and then